Welcome back to this episode of The Gigging Drummer. Have you ever wondered what drums to hit as a drummer? Have you ever wondered why John Bonham from my favorite group, Led Zeppelin, hit the drums and played the patterns he did? Well, today we're going to talk exactly about that question. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, in today's episode, I have a really interesting question I want to tackle with you. A number of years ago, when I was teaching grades 7 and 8, I was running an after-school electronic drum workshop, more about that in a later episode, and a young student came up to me and said, "Mr. G, how do I know what drum to hit?" And quite honestly, I had to think for a moment, and I had to tell the student, I'm going to get back to you because that is a really, really good question. After thinking about it and spending some time really almost researching it, I came up with an answer for her the following day. And what I'd like to do in today's episode is talk a little bit about what I presented to her and the students of my electronic drum class that particular day. So the answer to the question, how do you know what drum to hit? Well, when I think about, my favorite drummer of all time, John Bonham, and I think about, why did he end up playing so many triplets? And that became kind of like a hallmark of his sound. And when I think about the patterns he played and when he hits the crashes that he does at those particular times, do you ever often wonder how and why drummers do what they do? Well, this is the answer that I came up with, and I certainly hope that if you can add to this conversation, please feel free to chime in under the comments section of today's episode. I'd really love for the drummers out there to provide your insights on this too, because it's a fascinating question. Well, the first part of the question, as I explained to this young student, was part of it comes from your training, from the chops that you get from taking music lessons. Now, I'm self-taught for the most part. Having said that, I've had a number of really inspirational and incredible lessons from our local drum expert, Rob Jonice, and so I'd like to get back training with him because I really think, to kind of play as I do, as self-taught is one thing, but in order to really get to that next level, to train with somebody like our local guru, Rob Jonice, and he's one of a few in town, but Rob is one that I have a lot of confidence in, and I love his very yoga-like teaching style. But to have that training then is going to give you more tools in your toolbox. It's going to give you more that you can use to get around the drum kit. So for me, right now, in my kind of drumming career, I have a few tools. I would like to add a lot more tools to my box. That's going to come with a lot more training and a lot more dedication. So when you look at these guys that are moving around the kit and doing fills in a manner that they are, well, a lot of that comes from a dedication and a training that enables them to have a lot more tools to go to. So that's part one of the answer. Part two comes down to the style of the music that you're playing. I guess I'm going to compartmentalize myself as kind of a classic rock drummer, and I'm okay with that. Obviously, as a gigging drummer, many of the pros out there and weekend warriors have a lot more tools in their toolboxes than I have, and have the ability to play jazz and country and rock. I'm very comfortable doing what I do. I love playing in the bands that I do, and I'm okay with that. But if I'm playing jazz, the times that I'm going to be playing the ride and how I'm going to be playing my kick drum and the patterns, they're going to be largely dictated by the style of music that you play. So there are certain taboos in classic rock, like playing over a guitar solo and when I generally go to the ride cymbal. So there are some general standards there with the type of music that you play. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't necessarily break those standards and change those standards up a bit, but I think it's important to understand when we're talking about what drum do you hit, it is partly and a lot of it is dictated by the style of music that you play. Part three of my answer on that particular day, part of it comes from your emotions and it comes from your personality, right? I think a really good example of this is Keith Moon from The Who. And you think of that bombastic drumming style, that over-the-top drum fills. Well, Keith Moon, if you've ever read any biographies and autobiographies from the man, you realize that he was quite a wild man. And his personality basically largely shone through in his style of playing. So I think another part of the answer to that question, it's your personality. Are you laid back? Right? Again, I'm going to go back to Rob Jonice, who is a Juno Award-winning drummer in our community. And Rob also runs a yoga studio. Rob is extremely relaxed behind the drum kit, extremely calm, and he's very ergonomically precise. And so I think about Rob and the way he plays the drums. He comes at it almost like a yoga-like kind of manner. But his chops and what he's able to bring to the drum kit is quite numerous because of all of his years of work and dedication. Another part to the answer in my mind, it also comes from the chemistry and the inspiration that you get from the musicians you're playing with. So if you're playing in what I call a low energy band, then a lot of times it's hard as a drummer to feed off of that and pick that up. Now, good drummers, I do believe, can kind of bring that energy level up, and they can do that. But I think of a band as a unit, and even though the drummer has a lot of responsibility, I still believe we're a team. So there has to be that chemistry there, and so the inspiration and the energy you get from the other musicians in the band is extremely important, and you feed off of that. And so that's another answer to, well, how do I know what to hit when I do? Well, if I'm particularly more energetic on a certain day, I might find that I'm hitting cymbals and doing things that I wouldn't normally do. The last answer to the question that I provided on that day, and this is, I think, a really interesting one for young drummers and students of drumming, part of it comes from the lyrics. And I'll give you an example. We often end one of our sets with MLC, the band I play with, one of the bands I play with, and we play Keep On Rockin' in a Free World, classic Neil Young song. And in that song, Jimmy, our lead singer, there are the words machine gun. And as soon as I hear those words machine gun, I automatically kick into going very hard to my floor and trying to mimic that pa 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 pa, and that then leads me into the next part of the chorus. So if you're thinking about when should I hit what, part of it's dictated by the lyrics, and so I think it's important for drummers to actually pay attention to the lyrics of the song, and what is the artist trying to come across within that song. That song by Neil Young, Keep On Rockin' in a Free World, there is that kind of obviously rockin', groovin', heavy feel to that song. Therefore, the manner in which I play it should come through to kind of supplement and augment that. So that largely was the answer that I gave on that particular day. Mr. G, how do you know what drums to hit? So just to recap, part of it comes from your training, comes from the style of the music that you're playing. It comes from your emotions and your energy levels. It comes from the chemistry and the inspiration you get from your bandmates, and it also comes from the lyrics and what the musician is trying to, or the artist is trying to convey through the lyrics. Now, there's one really, really important caveat here, and I'm a weekend warrior drummer, and one of the reasons I created this channel was to kind of share some of my experiences over the last 17 plus years, not as a top level pro musician, not as somebody who has achieved Grammy status, but as just your regular Joe who's tried to teach himself drums and it has kind of got himself to a level where he's able to competently play out on weekends, in bars, and at private functions. But one of the taboos, obviously, is overplaying. And if you listen to any professional musician, and if you listen to some of the greats, they will tell you that it's our job to serve the music. And you're best to underplay than to overplay, in my humble opinion. So it's often been said, the best notes that a drummer plays are the ones that he doesn't play. Now, I know for me, I guess if I'm looking at my drum IQ and if I'm looking at my drum kind of fingerprint, I tend to be somebody who I think does lean towards the underplaying side of things. and I do try to keep it pretty simple. And I'm okay with that because I love just being on stage with my bandmates and trying to keep a good steady meter, keeping that 2 and 4 that I talked about in last week's session based on what Kenny Arnoff talked about. At any rate, I hope you found that useful. How do you know what drums to hit, Mr. G? Please chime in the comments section. If you can add to that, would love you to do that. Would love you to subscribe. Would love you to share. Would be very much appreciated. In my next episode, I'm going to address something. I've had a couple of comments about guys that have said, hey, is that your ride cymbal you have on your left? And why is your ride over there? And if you even notice on my electronic drum kit, I have the ride cymbal there. Well, that's because I play open-handed. So in the next lesson, I'd like to address what is open-handed playing and what are some of the modifications I've had to make to my drum kit as an open-handed player. And if you don't know what open-handed playing is, quite simply, it's a left-hand drummer playing on a right-hand drum kit. I look forward to that episode. Have a great day. Keep playing.